You know what's funny about being the family disappointment? It's not that you failed. It's that they need you to keep failing so they can keep winning. My name is Maya Reeves, I'm 34 years old, and for the last 6 years, my family has treated me like a cautionary tale they trot out at dinner parties. The daughter who came back. The one who couldn't make it work. The one who proves that dreaming too big is just another word for delusional. They don't say it like that, of course. They're too polished for honesty. Instead, they say things like, Maya's figuring things out, with this patronizing smile that makes you want to flip the table. Or, we're just glad she's close to home now, like I'm a rescue dog they took pity on. My mother's personal favorite is, not everyone is built for that kind of pressure, which she delivers with this theatrical sigh, as if my existence is a Greek tragedy she has to endure. And maybe you're thinking, okay, what happened? What did you do that was so catastrophic they turned you into their personal before and after story? I'll tell you. 6 years ago, I walked away from a government career that was supposed to define me. I had spent 8 years working in defense acquisition. Yeah, the boring stuff nobody talks about at parties. Not Silicon Valley. Not Wall Street. Nothing sexy or Instagram-worthy. I was a contracts officer for the Department of Defense, specializing in procurement logistics for classified technology systems. I know. Thrilling. My job was to make sure the right weapons systems, the right surveillance tech, the right infrastructure got into the right hands through the right channels without Congress losing their minds over budget overruns. It was stable. It was prestigious in a quiet, bureaucratic way. Came with a pension. My parents loved telling their country club friends that their daughter worked in defense. It sounded important without requiring them to understand what I actually did. But I hated it. Not the work itself, I was good at it, maybe too good. I hated the pace. I hated the politics. I hated watching billion-dollar decisions get made by people who didn't understand the systems they were buying. And I really hated knowing that I could see inefficiencies everywhere, solutions that could save taxpayers millions, and having absolutely no power to fix any of it because I was just another mid-level bureaucrat in a machine that rewarded compliance, not innovation. So I quit. I took everything I knew about government contracts, defense systems, and procurement logistics, and I started my own consulting firm. Small, specialized, targeting private defense contractors who needed someone who could navigate the labyrinth of federal acquisition regulations. Someone who knew which agencies were actually approachable, which program managers were competent, which contracts were worth bidding on, and which were bureaucratic death traps. For 2 years I lived off savings, worked 16-hour days, and slowly built a client base. And then, just as things were starting to gain traction, just as I was landing my first major contract with a mid-sized defense tech firm, my biggest client got acquired. The new parent company brought in their own consultants. My contract was terminated. 3 others followed within 6 months. The defense industry consolidated. Budgets tightened. My firm, which had been barely profitable, was suddenly bleeding money. I had 2 choices: take on massive debt to keep it alive or shut it down and salvage what I could. I shut it down. And I moved back home. You want to know what it's like to move back into your childhood bedroom at 28 years old after you've already tasted independence? It's archaeological. There's a poster of an indie band I pretended to like in high school because a boy I had a crush on liked them. There's a bookshelf full of college textbooks I'll never open again. There's a mirror I used to stand in front of, practicing confidence I didn't feel, imagining the life I was going to build. And now here I was unpacking boxes in that same room, listening to my mother explain to her friend on the phone, loudly because she wanted me to hear, that I was going through a transitional phase. Transitional. Like I was a teenager trying to find myself, not an adult who'd taken a calculated risk and lost. My father was worse. He didn't say much, but his silence was deafening. He'd built his career as a regional VP for a multinational logistics company. Stable. Predictable. 35 years, same company, same trajectory. To him, my decision to leave government work was incomprehensible. And my failure? Proof that he'd been right all along. You had a pension, Maya, he said once, shaking his head like I'd personally insulted him. Do you know how many people would kill for that kind of security? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that security isn't the same as fulfillment, that playing it safe isn't the same as living. But I didn't. Because what's the point of defending a dream that already died? My older brother Colin loved it. Colin is everything my parents wanted me to be. He's a corporate attorney at a white shoe law firm in Charlotte. He married his college sweetheart, Vanessa, who comes from old money and has a last name that opens doors. They have 2 kids, a house with a wine cellar and a golden retriever named Chancellor because of course they do. Colin never took risks. He never had to. He followed the script, good school, good firm, good marriage, and got rewarded for it. And now, with me back home, sleeping in my childhood bed and interviewing for jobs I was overqualified for just to pay rent to my own parents, he finally had proof that his way was the right way. He never said it outright. He didn't have to. It was in the way he'd ask, "So, any promising leads?" with this concerned frown that was really just smugness in disguise. It was in the way he'd offer to put in a word for me at companies I had no interest in working for, like I was a charity case. It was in the way Vanessa would smile at me during family dinners, this tight, pitying little smile, and say things like, "It's so brave that you're staying optimistic." Brave. Like optimism was the participation trophy they were handing out to losers. Here's the thing about being underestimated. At first, it stings. Feels like every conversation is a referendum on your worth. Every family gathering is a performance where you're expected to apologize for existing. But after a while, something shifts. You stop defending yourself. You stop trying to prove anything. Because you realize that the people who've already decided you're a failure aren't looking for evidence to the contrary. They're looking for confirmation. And once you accept that, once you stop performing for their approval, you become invisible. Which, as it turns out, is exactly where you want to be. I spent the next year working quietly. I took a job as a compliance consultant for a mid-sized firm that specialized in federal contract auditing. It was boring. It paid the bills, kept my parents off my back, and it gave me access. See, when you work in compliance, you see everything. Every contract, every vendor relationship, every approval process. You learn who controls what, who needs what, who's desperate for what. And I started to notice patterns. There was a particular subset of defense contracts, small, specialized, low profile, that were consistently being bottlenecked. Not because of budget issues. Not because of capability gaps, but because of regulatory clearances. Specific approvals from specific agencies that most contractors didn't even know they needed until it was too late. These weren't sexy contracts. They weren't multi-billion-dollar fighter jet programs. They were things like secure communication infrastructure for federal facilities, cybersecurity systems for classified networks, logistics software for supply chain management. Boring. Invisible. And I knew how to get them approved. I spent 2 years rebuilding my network. I reached out to old colleagues still working in government. I identified the decision makers, the GS-14s and GS-15s who actually reviewed these contracts, the program managers who had discretion over approvals. I made myself useful. I solved problems. I didn't ask for anything in return. And then I started consulting again. But this time I didn't market myself as a strategist or an advisor. I positioned myself as a facilitator, a fixer, someone who could take a contract that was stuck in bureaucratic limbo and move it forward. Not through corruption or backroom deals, through expertise, through relationships, through knowing exactly which forms to file, which objections to preempt, which arguments to make. Within 18 months I had 6 clients, all of them small to mid-sized defense contractors. All of them desperate. All of them willing to pay a premium for someone who could actually deliver results. I didn't tell my family. Why would I? You have to understand something about my family. They don't value privacy. They value perception. When I shut down my first firm, my mother told everyone. Her book club. Her yoga class. Her friends at church. She didn't do it maliciously. She genuinely believed she was being supportive, explaining why I'd moved back home, why I was figuring things out. But it wasn't support. It was gossip. And once that information was out there, it became ammunition. Other people's questions became judgments. Oh, Maya's back? What happened? Couldn't make it work? That's such a shame. She seems so driven. I learned that anything I shared with my family would become public knowledge within 48 hours. My struggles, my setbacks, my plans. All of it filtered through my mother's need to explain me, through Colin's need to position himself as the successful one, through my father's silent disappointment. So when I started succeeding again, quietly, incrementally, in a way that didn't come with press releases or LinkedIn updates, I didn't tell them. Not because I was hiding. Because I was protecting. I wasn't hiding my life. I was protecting it. By the time I turned 32, my consulting work had evolved into something more structured. I'd formalized my business into an LLC, Reeves Advisory Group. I'd brought on 2 junior consultants, both former government acquisition specialists who understood the landscape. We operated out of a small office in Raleigh, nothing flashy, but we were clearing mid-6 figures annually. More importantly, I'd developed a reputation. Not a public one. There were no magazine profiles, no conference keynotes. But within a very specific subset of the defense contracting world, people knew my name. If you needed a logistics contract approved by the Defense Logistics Agency, you called me. If you needed cybersecurity infrastructure cleared through the Department of Homeland Security, you called me. If you had a stuck procurement process and couldn't figure out why, you called me. I wasn't famous. I was effective. And my family had no idea. To them, I was still working as a consultant, which they assumed meant I was freelancing, scraping by, probably still paying rent to my parents even though I'd moved into my own apartment 2 years earlier. My mother still introduced me to people as my daughter who's finding her footing. Colin still offered to send me job postings, unprompted, for entry-level positions at his firm. My father still talked about retirement planning in front of me like I was a cautionary tale about what happens when you don't prioritize a pension. And I let them believe it. Because the truth was, I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't need them to understand what I did or respect how I did it. I needed them to underestimate me. Because underestimated people have power. They can move without being watched. They can build without being questioned. They can succeed without having to defend it. The breaking point came in the form of a wedding. Not mine, obviously. My cousin Lee's. Lee is Colin's age, late 30s, and she was marrying a man named Preston Holt. And if you're from North Carolina and you know anything about regional money, that last name means something. The Holts own commercial real estate across the Southeast. They have a building named after them at Duke. They sit on nonprofit boards and get photographed at charity galas. This wasn't just a wedding. This was a dynastic merger. And my family was obsessed. For 6 months leading up to the event, every conversation revolved around it. What Lee was wearing. Who was invited. Whether Preston's family would bring any important people. My mother bought a new dress and had it tailored 3 times. Colin was asked to give a toast which he spent weeks rehearsing. Even my father, who normally treats social events like mandatory tax filings, seemed genuinely excited. Because this wedding wasn't just about Lee. It was about proximity to power. It was about being seen with the right people, making the right impression, securing the right connections. And then 3 weeks before the wedding, I got uninvited. Not officially, of course. That would have been too direct. It came through my mother, delivered with the kind of careful phrasing that's designed to sound reasonable even though it absolutely isn't. We were having coffee, one of those obligatory monthly check-ins she insists on, and she brought it up casually like it was a minor scheduling conflict. So about Lee's wedding, she said, stirring her latte with this overly focused expression, like the milk foam required her full attention. There's been a slight change. I looked up. What kind of change? Well, the guest list got a little tight. You know how these things are. Preston's family is quite large, and Lee wanted to make sure there was enough room for everyone important. I stared at her. Everyone important. You know what I mean, Maya. People. Family, friends. Business connections. It's a big event and they want to make sure the atmosphere is right. And I ruin the atmosphere. Don't be dramatic. She took a sip of her latte, still not meeting my eyes. It's just that Lee and Preston are trying to make a certain impression and I'm bad optics. She flinched. Not much, but enough. That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. My mother set down her cup, finally looking at me, and for a second I thought she might actually argue. But instead she sighed. That same theatrical sigh she's been perfecting for decades. The one that says, why do you have to make everything so difficult? Maya, this isn't personal. It's just that, given everything you've been through, given where you are right now, Lee thought it might be better if I stayed home. If you didn't feel obligated to attend, she corrected, like the phrasing made it better. You've been under a lot of stress. You're still rebuilding. And this is a very high-profile event. There will be a lot of questions, a lot of people asking about your career, your plans. Lee just didn't want you to feel uncomfortable. Right? I said slowly. She's protecting me. Exactly. By uninviting me to a family wedding. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Mom? She didn't answer. Just looked at me with this pained expression, like I was being unreasonable by expecting basic respect. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't about Lee. This wasn't about the guest list. This was about control. My family had decided that I was a liability. That my presence, my existence, might reflect poorly on them in front of people they wanted to impress. That my instability, my failure to follow the script, made me unsuitable for public display. I was the embarrassing relative you hide in the back room. The one you don't talk about. The one who gets cropped out of family photos. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just nodded, finished my coffee and left. Because here's what my mother didn't know. Here's what none of them knew. Preston Holt's family company, Holt Commercial Group, was in the middle of a major expansion project. They were building a logistics hub outside of Fort Bragg. Now Fort Liberty, but everyone still calls it Bragg, and they needed federal approval for security clearances. The facility was going to handle sensitive supply chain operations for military contractors, which meant it needed certification from the Defense Logistics Agency. And guess who controlled the consulting relationship with the contractor managing that certification process? Yeah, me. I want to be very clear about something. I didn't plan this. I didn't orchestrate some elaborate revenge plot. I didn't even know about the connection until 2 weeks before the wedding, when one of my junior consultants flagged a new project inquiry. We got a call from Holt Commercial Group, she said during our weekly project review. They're trying to expedite clearance on a logistics facility near Fayetteville. The contractor they hired is stuck in approval hell and they're getting desperate. They want to know if we can help. I looked at the file. Saw the name. Felt something cold settle in my chest. What's the timeline? I asked. They need movement in the next 60 days or the whole project gets delayed. Could cost them millions. And they specifically asked for us? By name. Apparently someone in their network recommended you. I nodded slowly. Tell them we'll take a look. But I want to handle this one personally. Because here's the thing about power. It's not about what you do with it. It's about whether people know you have it. And my family had no idea. The week leading up to the wedding was chaos for everyone else. My mother called me twice to check in, which really meant she wanted to make sure I wasn't going to cause a scene by showing up anyway. Colin texted me links to self-help podcasts about resilience and moving forward. Vanessa sent me a care package with aromatherapy candles and a book about finding your purpose. It was patronizing. It was insulting. And I smiled and thanked them. Because while they were obsessing over seating charts and rehearsal dinners, I was sitting in my office reviewing the Holt contract file. The project was a disaster. The contractor they'd hired had submitted the wrong documentation to the DLA 3 times. They'd missed critical compliance requirements. They'd failed to anticipate objections from the Environmental Review Board. The whole thing was stalled and Holt Commercial was staring down penalty clauses and investor pressure. Under normal circumstances, fixing this would take months. Maybe longer. But I'd spent years building relationships with the exact people who could move this forward. I knew which objections were legitimate and which were bureaucratic posturing. I knew which documentation gaps could be filled quickly and which required ground-up rework. I could fix this. The question was, did I want to? The wedding was on a Saturday. Rehearsal dinner was Friday night at some country club with a waiting list longer than the guest list. I spent Friday evening at my apartment drinking wine and reading contract language, trying to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. The vindictive part of me, the part that was still angry about being uninvited, about being treated like a liability, about 6 years of condescension and doubt, wanted to let the project fail. Wanted to watch Preston's family scramble. Wanted my family to sit at that wedding, smiling and networking and pretending everything was perfect, while their precious connection imploded behind the scenes. But the professional part of me, the part that had spent years rebuilding my reputation, that valued competence over pettiness, knew that wasn't who I was. I didn't succeed by sabotaging other people. I succeeded by being better than them expected. So Saturday morning, while my family was getting ready for the ceremony, I sent an email to the senior project manager at Holt Commercial. Subject line, Fort Liberty Logistics Facility, Path Forward. In it, I outlined exactly what they needed to do to get the project back on track. Which forms to refile. Which objections to address. Which agency contacts to prioritize. I attached a detailed compliance checklist and a recommended timeline. And at the bottom I included my consulting fee structure. Because I'm not a martyr. I'm a businesswoman. The wedding was apparently beautiful. I saw the photos later. My mother posted 37 of them on Facebook, each one hashtag with things like hashtag family first and hashtag love and legacy. There was Colin giving his toast looking appropriately emotional. There was Vanessa in a fascinator that probably cost more than my rent. There was my father, stiff and uncomfortable in a tuxedo, standing next to Preston's father, both of them holding cocktails and pretending to enjoy small talk. And there was Lee, radiant in a custom gown, smiling like someone who'd just secured her future. What the photos didn't show was the moment, about 2 hours into the reception right after the cake cutting, when Preston got pulled aside by his father. I didn't see it happen, but I heard about it later. Apparently, Preston's father had just gotten a call from their senior project manager about the Fort Liberty facility. About the consulting firm that had just sent over a comprehensive fix for their stalled approval process. About the name attached to that firm. Reeves Advisory Group. The first call came Sunday morning. My mother, frantic. Maya, are you working with the Holts? I was on my couch drinking coffee still in my pajamas. Define working with. Preston's father asked about you. At the wedding. He said something about a consulting contract and I had no idea what he was talking about and did you not tell us you were working with them? Why would I tell you? Silence. Then quieter. People are asking questions, Maya. They want to know why we didn't mention your work. They think we were hiding something. Maybe you were. That's not fair. Isn't it? She hung up. Colin called next. Monday afternoon, right as I was getting ready for a meeting. We need to talk, he said, no preamble. I'm listening. What the hell are you doing? My job, Colin. What are you doing? Don't be cute. You're working with the Holts and you didn't tell anyone. Do you have any idea how that looks? How what looks? Like you deliberately kept it quiet to embarrass us. I laughed. Actually laughed. I kept it quiet because the last time I told this family anything about my work, it became public information within 24 hours. Remember when Mom told her entire yoga class I was struggling? Remember when you offered to get me an entry-level job at your firm because you assumed I was desperate? That's not. You treated me like a charity case, Colin. You treated me like someone who needed to be managed. And now you're mad because it turns out I didn't. This isn't about that. Then what's it about? You made us look stupid. And there was. Not we're proud of you. Not we're sorry we misjudged you. Just, you made us look stupid. Because that's all it ever was. Not my success. Not my failure. Just how it reflected on them. The calls kept coming. My mother again asking if I could smooth things over with Preston's family, as if I owed them an apology for existing. My father, stiff and formal, telling me that professional discretion is important, and that I should have kept the family informed. Vanessa sent a text. Hey. Just wanted to say congrats on your consulting work. Smiling face was smiling as we had no idea you were doing so well. Maybe we can grab lunch and you can tell me all about it. I deleted it. Because here's the thing. They didn't want to know about my work. They didn't want to celebrate my success. They wanted access. They wanted to be able to say, oh yes, my daughter works with the Holts, at their next dinner party. They wanted to leverage my connections the same way they'd leveraged everything else in their lives. Social capital, proximity to power, the right last names in the right rooms. They wanted to benefit from my success without ever having to respect the work it took to build it. The real fallout came 2 weeks later. Holt Commercial signed a formal consulting contract with my firm. 6-month engagement, mid-six-figure retainer with performance bonuses tied to project milestones. And word got out. Not because I advertised it, but because in the world of defense contracting, especially in regional markets, people talk. Contractors started calling, asking if I was taking new clients. Former colleagues reached out to congratulate me. One of the trade publications, Defense Industry Daily, nothing huge, ran a small piece about boutique consulting firms filling niche gaps in federal acquisition processes, and mentioned my firm by name. Suddenly, I wasn't just competent. I was visible. And my family couldn't handle it. My mother called, breathless. Maya, people keep asking me about your company and I don't know what to say. Can you send me something I can share? Like a website or a brochure? I have a website, Mom. You've never asked for the link before. Well, I'm asking now. Why? Because people want to know. They think it's wonderful that you're doing so well, and I want to be able to support you. You want to be able to take credit. That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. She hung up. Okay. Colin tried a different approach. He invited me to lunch. His treat, he emphasized like that made it generous, and spent the first 15 minutes asking surface-level questions about my work. So, defense contracting, he said, cutting into his steak. That's a pretty niche field. It is. And you're doing well? I'm doing fine. Better than fine from what I hear. I looked at him. What did you hear? Just that you landed a major contract with the Holts. That's impressive, Maya. Really impressive. Thanks. I was thinking, he said, setting down his fork, leaning forward like he was about to share something important. You know, my firm has a government contracts division. Small but growing. If you ever wanted to explore a partnership or maybe even a full-time role, I could put in a word. Senior consultant position. Good benefits. It might be a better fit than trying to manage your own firm. I stared at him. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you an opportunity. At your firm. It's a good firm, Maya. So is mine. I'm just saying you've proven yourself. You don't need to keep grinding as an independent consultant. You could have stability. Support. A team. I have a team, Colin. A real team. And there was the assumption that my success was still somehow lesser. That my firm, my work, my choices were still just a phase I'd grow out of once I realized what real success looked like. I'm not interested, I said. You should at least think about it. I'm not interested. He sat back, jaw tight. Fine. Just trying to help. No, you're trying to control. There's a difference. The final straw came a month later. Family dinner at my parents' house. One of those mandatory Sunday gatherings that everyone attends out of obligation rather than genuine desire to be together. I almost didn't go. I was curious. Curious to see how they'd handle it now that the story had shifted. Now that I wasn't the cautionary tale anymore. Turns out they couldn't. My mother spent the entire meal steering conversations away from me. Anytime someone asked about my work, and people did ask because by now extended family had heard, she'd change the subject. Oh, Maya's doing wonderfully, but let's not talk shop at dinner. Colin, tell everyone about that case you won. My father barely looked at me. Just ate in silence, occasionally nodding when Colin talked, completely checked out whenever I spoke. And Colin spent the whole dinner subtly undermining me. Little comments disguised as compliments. It's great Maya found her niche. Not everyone can handle the corporate world. Or, I think it's admirable that she's happy with a smaller operation. Not everyone needs to scale. Vanessa tried to be supportive in her Vanessa way. You know, Maya, I've been telling all my friends about your work. They're so impressed. Some of them are even asking if you do consulting for other industries. I don't, I said. Oh, well, so. It's wonderful. And then my mother trying to redirect again. Vanessa, how's your charity gala planning going? I set down my fork. Why are you doing this? I asked. The table went silent. My mother blinked. Doing what? This. Pretending I don't exist. Changing the subject every time someone asks about my work. Acting like my success is something embarrassing that needs to be managed. Maya, that's not. Yes, it is. You uninvited me to Lee's wedding because you thought I'd be bad optics. You treated me like a liability. And now that it turns out I'm not, you can't handle it. You can't handle the fact that I succeeded without your approval. My father finally looked up. That's enough. No, it's not enough. For 6 years you treated me like a failure. You made me feel like I was an embarrassment to this family. And I didn't argue because I thought maybe you were right. Maybe I had failed. Maybe coming home was proof that I wasn't strong enough, smart enough, ambitious enough. Why, but I was wrong. I didn't fail. I just succeeded in a way you didn't understand. In a way you couldn't control. And that's what really bothers you, isn't it? Not that I struggled. Not that I moved home. But that I rebuilt on my own terms without your input, without your approval, without giving you the chance to take credit. Colin scoffed. That's not fair. Isn't it? You offered me a job, Colin. After years of acting like I was unemployable, you offered me a job. Not because you believe in me. Because you want to absorb my success into yours. You want to turn my firm into a footnote in your career. I was trying to help you. No. You were trying to control me. Just like always. I stood up, grabbed my coat. My mother's voice was small, hurt. Where are you going? Home. My home. Not this one. Maya, please. We're family. I stopped at the door, looked back at all of them. My mother, teary-eyed and confused. My father, stone-faced and silent. Colin, jaw clenched, looking like he wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Vanessa, staring at her plate, clearly wishing she was anywhere else. You only valued me when you thought I could add status, I said quietly. When I was struggling, I was an embarrassment. Now that I'm succeeding, I'm an asset. But I was never just your daughter. Just someone you loved regardless of what I achieved. I was always a reflection. A story you told about yourselves. My mother started to say something, but I didn't wait to hear it. I left. Here's what happened next. I didn't cut them off completely. I'm not interested in dramatic estrangement or turning this into some Lifetime movie about family betrayal. But I set boundaries. I stopped going to family dinners unless I wanted to. I stopped answering calls that were thinly veiled fishing expeditions for information about my clients or my business. I stopped explaining myself, justifying my choices, defending my success. And I stopped giving them access. When my mother asked if I could introduce Colin to someone at Holt Commercial because he was networking in that space, I said no. When my father suggested I hire Colin's firm for legal work because it would be good to keep it in the family, I said I already had a legal team. When Vanessa asked if I'd be willing to speak at one of her charity events because it would be so inspiring, I declined. Not out of spite. Out of self-preservation. Because the moment I gave them access, the moment I let them back into my professional life, they'd find a way to make it about them. They'd find a way to take credit, to rewrite the narrative, to turn my success into evidence of their good parenting or their family values or whatever story they needed to tell themselves. And I wasn't interested in being a character in their story anymore. My firm kept growing. We brought on 2 more consultants. Opened a second office. Started getting inquiries from clients outside our usual regional footprint. I got invited to speak at a defense industry conference in Arlington. Nothing major. A panel on acquisition reform, but it was the first time I'd done anything public-facing in years. My mother texted me after, "Saw you were at a conference. So proud." I didn't respond. Because here's what I learned. People who dismissed you when you were struggling don't get to celebrate you when you succeed. People who treated you like a liability don't get to claim you as an asset. Respect isn't retroactive. About a year after the wedding, I ran into Lee at a coffee shop. It was awkward. She saw me first, hesitated, then walked over with this tight, uncertain smile. Why? Hi. Hey Lee. I heard your firm is doing really well. It is. That's great. Really great. She shifted her weight, looked uncomfortable. I wanted to say I'm sorry. About the wedding. That wasn't my call and I should have. It's fine. It's not fine. It was shitty. And I feel terrible about it. I looked at her. She seemed genuine. Genuinely uncomfortable, genuinely regretful. Why didn't you say something at the time? I asked. She hesitated. Because I was scared. I was so focused on making everything perfect, on impressing Preston's family, that I just went along with it. And I know that's not an excuse. But I'm sorry. I nodded slowly. Okay. Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. She looked relieved. Maybe we could get coffee sometime? Catch up. Maybe. We didn't. But I appreciated the apology. 2 years later, my firm had 15 employees and offices in 3 states. We'd expanded beyond defense, contracting into adjacent industries. Federal infrastructure, cybersecurity compliance, logistics systems for state governments. I got a call from a reporter at Federal News Network, an actual defense trade publication with real readership, asking if I'd be willing to do an interview about boutique consulting firms disrupting traditional government contracting models. I said yes. The article ran with the headline, "How Small Firms Are Filling the Gaps Big Consultancies Ignore." There was a photo of me in my office, sitting at my desk, looking competent and professional and nothing like the woman my family had written off 6 years earlier. My mother texted me, "Saw the article. You look wonderful. I didn't respond. People ask me sometimes if I regret how things played out with my family. Honestly, I don't know. I regret that it had to come to that. I regret that they couldn't see me, really see me, until I'd already built something they couldn't ignore. I regret that their love felt conditional, contingent on my ability to reflect well on them. But I don't regret setting boundaries. I don't regret protecting my work, my success, my life from people who only valued it when it benefited them. Because here's the truth. The people who underestimate you aren't your enemy. They're your opportunity. They teach you resilience. They teach you self-reliance. They teach you that your worth isn't determined by their approval. And more than that, they reveal themselves. My family revealed that their support was conditional. That their love came with expectations. That I was never just their daughter or their sister. I was a narrative, a story they told about themselves. And when that story didn't fit, when I didn't fit, they tried to edit me out. But I'm not a story. I'm a person. And I don't need to be understood by people who never bothered to ask. Last month I got an invitation in the mail. Colin's daughter, my niece Sophia, was graduating from high school. The invitation was formal, printed on heavy cardstock with a handwritten note from Vanessa. We'd love to have you there. Sophia asks about you all the time. I almost didn't go. But then I thought about Sophia. 16 years old, smart, ambitious, probably already feeling the weight of expectations from a family that values predictability over passion. So I went. The ceremony was fine. Standard high school graduation, too long, too many speeches, too much pomp. But I stayed for the whole thing. Afterward, at the reception, Sophia found me. Aunt Maya. You came. Of course I came. She hugged me, then pulled back, grinning. Mom said you've been really busy with work. She showed me that article about your company. That's so cool. Thanks, sophomore. I've been thinking about what I want to study in college. Everyone keeps telling me to do something practical, something stable. But I don't know. I kind of want to do something different. I looked at her. Saw myself at that age. Scared and hopeful and trying to figure out how to want something that didn't fit the script. Then do something different, I said. But what if it doesn't work out? Then it doesn't work out. And you try something else. But what if everyone thinks I'm making a mistake? I smiled. Then let them think that. Their opinion doesn't define your success. She looked at me for a long moment. Did you ever regret leaving your government job? Every day for about 2 years. But not anymore? Not anymore. She nodded slowly. I'm glad you came. Me too. As I was leaving, my mother caught me in the parking lot. Why? Wait. I turned. She looked older than I remembered. Tired. Smaller somehow. I'm glad you came, she said. Sophia invited me. I know. But still. I'm glad. We stood there in silence for a moment, the evening air heavy between us. I'm sorry, she said finally. For a lot of things. For not understanding. For making you feel like you had to prove yourself. For treating your struggles like something to be managed instead of something to be supported. I nodded. Didn't say anything. I don't know how to fix this, she said quietly. I don't know how to go back and do it differently. You can't, I said. You can't go back. You can only go forward. And forward means what? You just tolerate us from a distance. Forward means boundaries. It means I don't owe you explanations. It means my success isn't a family asset and my struggles aren't family gossip. It means I'm your daughter, not your story. She looked like she might cry. That's all I ever wanted you to be. No, it's not. But maybe it can be now. I didn't wait for a response. Just got in my car and drove away. So here's what I want you to understand. This isn't a story about revenge. It's not about proving people wrong or making them regret underestimating you. It's about survival. It's about realizing that some people will never see you the way you need to be seen. That some people will only value you when it serves them. That some people will mistake your resilience for instability, your independence for failure, your quiet success for insignificance. And when you realize that, when you really truly accept it, you have a choice. You can keep trying to prove yourself to them. Keep defending, explaining, justifying. Keep hoping that one day they'll understand, they'll respect you, they'll see you the way you want to be seen. Or you can let go. Not of them necessarily, but of the need for their approval. You can build something they don't understand. Succeed in ways they don't recognize. Live a life that doesn't fit their narrative. And you can do it knowing that their failure to see you isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their limitations. My firm is doing well. Better than well. We're on track to break 8 figures in revenue this year. We've hired a full-time HR manager and a CFO. We're being courted by private equity firms interested in acquisition, though I'm not interested in selling. I have a life I built, a team I trust, clients who respect my work. And I have something my family never gave me, the certainty that I don't need to be understood to be valuable. My mother still calls sometimes, usually on holidays or birthdays. The conversations are polite, surface level. She asks how I'm doing. I tell her I'm fine. She tells me about Colin, about Sophia, about family friends I don't remember. We don't talk about the wedding. We don't talk about the years I spent in that childhood bedroom feeling like a failure. We don't talk about the ways they underestimated me or the ways I proved them wrong. We just exist in each other's orbits. Distantly. Carefully. And that's okay. Because I'm not angry anymore. I'm not trying to prove anything anymore. I'm just living. Building. Succeeding on my own terms. And if they can't see that, if they can't celebrate that, if they're still waiting for me to fit into a narrative they can understand, that's their loss. Not mine. They called me unstable. They meant I was unpredictable. Unreliable. A risk. But what they really meant, what they couldn't say, was that I was uncontrollable. I wouldn't follow the script. I wouldn't let them define me. I wouldn't let their doubts become my limitations. And that terrified them. Because when you can't control someone, when you can't predict their choices or manage their narrative, you lose power over them. And my family hated that. They hated that I left a stable job without asking permission. They hated that I failed without apologizing. They hated that I rebuilt without needing their guidance. They hated that I succeeded without sharing credit. They called it instability. I call it freedom. So if you're reading this, if you're the one your family whispers about, the one they're embarrassed by, the one they disinvite from weddings because you're bad optics, let me tell you something. You're not unstable. You're uncontrollable. And that's exactly what you should be. Because the people who need to control you will never respect you. They'll never celebrate you. They'll never see you as anything more than a reflection of themselves. And you deserve more than that. You deserve to be seen. To be valued. To be loved. Not despite your choices but because of them. So build your life. Make your choices. Succeed in ways they don't understand. And when they finally notice, when they finally realize that you were never failing, you were just succeeding on your own terms, don't let them in. Don't let them take credit. Don't let them rewrite the story. Don't let them treat your success like it was inevitable, like they always believed in you, like they were supporting you all along. Because they weren't. And you don't owe them the illusion that they were. My name is Maya Reeves. I'm 34 years old. And I'm not my family's cautionary tale. I'm my own success story. And that's all I've ever needed to be.